Hey, how you going? So, I've attended two funerals in the last 2 days. How about that? That's I've never done that before in my life, and I must say it's been pretty hard going. Um, I'm a lot more affected by it than I thought I would be, and so much so I thought I'd actually share my experiences, my reflections, what I went through, um, because all of us unfortunately have to confront death and the death of others at some point. And as I was going through the two funerals, obviously I was there and just trying to be there for the people that we'd lost. But they were quite different funerals, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the different funerals and how people, the deceased, were celebrated. And most importantly, what I learned from these events. To me, it wasn't simply, okay, I'm off to a funeral and that's done and dusted now. And of course, for me, I also reflect on my own life and think, wow, how many more years have I got? Am I going to use that time remaining um, in the best possible way? So I think the first thing that surprised me in both funerals was how little we know about other people's lives. Um, both of them were wonderful in celebrating and sharing different stages of people's lives, right through from their early years, middle years, later years. Um, and I was struck at how rich people's lives are. Um, how they'd moved from the country to the city, or from war-torn areas to, in our case, Australia, to escape violence and conflict, um, and the different challenges people had to navigate, immigration and unemployment and sickness and all sorts of things to end up being somebody that I experienced, particularly more later in my life, and never knowing that they had all this history and all this stuff that they went through. So it made me wonder, there's probably not too many people that know a lot about my life. And funerals are that opportunity to, unfortunately, tell the full story. And I just wonder, with you and your life, if you ask yourself, well, how many people know your story? Be an interesting thing to ponder. And not that you have to share things, but um, when we die, those stories, unless they're shared, unless people know them, they do disappear. Um, yeah, people's lives are a lot richer than we imagine, and that goes for ourselves as well. Also struck by the many different ways to celebrate somebody's life when they die. The funeral 2 days ago was, I don't know, kind of a more mainstream funeral, if I said that. It wasn't a Christian one. It was held at a funeral home. I must say I'm not a real big fan of funeral home ceremonies. The the celebrant running it had never met the deceased, um, so therefore was reliant on what she'd been told by the family, which, she did the best she could, but it felt less genuine. It felt impersonal. It felt mechanical, like it was, I don't know, like it was a machine kind of churning out the next funeral. But even at that funeral, it was wonderful to see elements of the person that I did know about. Like, they're a big fan of Coke, not so much drinking it, but they were a big collector of Coke memorabilia. And it was amazing to walk into this room, seeing the casket, the coffin, and it was completely emblazoned with Coca-Cola signage. Never seen that before. So white and red, and all the words and the letters that were used on the overhead projectors accompanying the photos of their life were all in the Coca-Cola font. So a lot of thought had gone into that, and it was obviously meaningful for the person, but also the family, because that was part of what made them who they were. So that was a couple of days ago. The funeral I went to this morning was quite different. It was at a community centre, and the person who died was a Buddhist nun, and their partner's a Buddhist monk. And so half the ceremony was, I guess, testimonials, people talking about the deceased person's life. Once again, hearing so much rich stories, rich information about struggles to escape conflict in Europe, and struggles in relationships and establishing themselves in Australia. But, in both cases, I felt like people, at least these two people, they're everyday people. They're not, celebrities, but they have so many different aspects and chapters to their life. I was kind of blown away by how rich their lives were. Really impressed, actually. So the funeral a couple of days ago, they celebrated much of the person's life through their music. They loved Bruce Springsteen, and there was quite a few of their songs played. And as I mentioned about Coke, the one today, there were Buddhist readings. There were a lovely touch at the end when the funeral was carried out, or the coffin was carried out. Everyone was given the opportunity to grab some rose petals, which were meaningful in terms of the colours to the deceased, and to sprinkle that onto the coffin to symbolise the journey that they're on into the afterlife. But both of them, in their own ways, shared the importance of marking these events in our life. And although we can feel like funerals are sort of the end, I've often found that they're very crucial in not necessarily the deceased person's life. Obviously, their life is over, but sometimes the living can find connections and, missing pieces of the jigsaw that they didn't know about in the past. I've been to funerals in the past where half sisters, half brothers have formed relationships that they never had before because they came together at the same funeral. I think one thing that's always very tough about funerals is emotions. In one way, you're trying to talk about things and share information, stories, yet the emotions can kick in. Yeah, so I just had to stop the video for a second because a storm came through, but hopefully it's a little bit quieter now. very hot here in Melbourne today, so it's nice to have a bit of a cool change. I was talking about emotions. I certainly experienced many of the people at the funerals, struggling with their own emotions that come to the surface, and not quite sure what to do with them. Um, some children spoke really well, actually, about their grandma and what you know she'd meant to them, um, and they allowed or naturally, their emotions came to the surface, and um, just reminded me of our children just have got the answers, really. They seem to know how to deal with these situations a lot better than adults. They talked about the experiences that they had with their grandma, and occasionally would break down and then pull themselves together and keep going. And so important for them to be involved and share those things, um, and to be open and to be vulnerable, whereas so many of the adults there were, you know, just contained, I guess. And at today's funeral, the Buddhist one, there were some wonderful quotes from a little girl who, during the service, somebody was talking, giving some speech, and she said, "Goldilocks." Just used that word Goldilocks in the middle of nowhere, and it kind of just changed the atmosphere and lightened it up a bit. And then the ceremony went on quite a long time, like an hour and a half or something. It was quite a long time that I was getting a bit tired, and I think other people were, about sitting down for so long. And another young girl just piped up out of nowhere and said, so that everyone heard, "Why do these people keep talking?" Um, so they're like pressure releases. I find these things that kids do that just remind you to just don't take yourself so seriously, and there's more than just this kind of artificial seriousness that we often put on. Finally, the other observation or bit of homework for me is it's really started getting me to think more and more about my death, um, and what I'd like to have happen. Write down, if you like, a list of things that I would prefer, like, the music and what people might want to say, or, like poems or music, different, things to read out that reflect me. It's not that other people won't know those, but so that they've got a bit of an idea and not have to feel like they've got to scramble. I think it's difficult when people lose you for them to know, well, how do they do justice to you and not just, you know, um, pick whatever they think they can. And, if they're grief stricken, I think it's a big ask for them to have to try and plan and manage all this stuff. Um, so yeah, I don't think I'm going to do it overnight by any means, but I might just keep a list on my phone or my book here and just write down thoughts as they come to me. Occasionally I hear a song and I think, oh, I wouldn't mind that being, you know, put into my, or played at my funeral. Some people think it's kind of morbid to think about your funeral, but I tend not to. And I think the reality of these last 2 days, one person was in their 70s, one in their 80s. Now I'm in my 60s, so, I mean, but you can die at any time. But I think I've heard this said of other older people. The older you get, the more funerals you go to, and I think that's true. So I think I'm pulling something out of these experiences that's not just negative. I don't feel a sadness. In fact, I feel a great appreciation for the people that have died and their lives, and certainly, although they weren't really close to me, I knew them, and I can see the importance they played in other people's lives. And I'm trying to take away some lessons from this, and about how I can make even more use of the life that I've got in the time that I have left. And I think, talking to you through each video, I think that's part of it too. It gives me an opportunity to connect with other people about topics that we don't often do. And I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you for being part of this and other videos. And my network, my network of people who are interested in certain things and want to connect. Because I think as human beings, that's really important. To be isolated on your own is never a happy place, I don't think, for anyone. And I really value the connections, the comments, the interaction that people give me through this. And I hope I can do my bit to create space for this to continue on. So hope you have a good one, and keep pedaling. And remember, think about your own story and how you want that to be told when you do die. Okay, take care. See ya.